The wind, a constant, abrasive sculptor of the Arizona desert, usually carried only the scent of sun-baked earth and distant sage. But for Elias Vance, a retired cavalry scout turned solitary prospector, it had begun to carry something else. A faint, mournful howl that seemed to echo from the heart of Widow's Peak, the jagged, ominous mountain range that dominated the horizon. Elias, a man whose silence was as vast as the desert he roamed, usually dismissed such sounds as coyotes or the tricks of the wind. But this howl was different. It carried a chilling note of despair and a primal hunger that raised the hairs on his neck. He'd made camp near the foot of Widow's Peak, drawn by rumors of untouched gold veins. The mountain, named for the lone, jagged spire that pierced the sky, had a dark reputation. Tales spoke of lost prospectors, their bodies found desiccated, their faces frozen in silent screams. Locals whispered of a living thirst that haunted its slopes, but Elias, a man of hard logic, had always scoffed at such superstitions. His mule, Old Daisy, usually stoic, was agitated. She kept pulling at her tether, her ears twitching towards the peak, letting out low, anxious whickers. Even his seasoned tracking dog, Buster, typically fearless, whimpered at the edge of the campfire's light, his eyes fixed on the shadowed slopes of Widow's Peak, a low growl rumbling in his chest. As night deepened, painting the sky in fiery hues before plunging it into inky blackness, the howl intensified. It was no longer faint. It was a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the ground, accompanied by a faint, rhythmic thump-thump that seemed to beat in time with his own anxious heart. It was too regular, too heavy, to be any animal he knew. Elias gripped his Winchester, its cold steel a familiar comfort. He moved to the edge of his camp, peering into the gloom of the desert night towards the peak. The vast silence of the desert was broken only by that awful howl, now joined by a chorus of chilling, almost human-like whimpers that seemed to rise from the very stones of the mountain. Then, from the lower slopes of Widow's Peak, he saw it. A faint, shimmering outline against the darkness, moving slowly, deliberately, down towards the flatland. It was immense, far larger than any wolf or bear. It was a distorted, grotesque form, vaguely quadrupedal, but too angular, too unnaturally large. And from its very being, a profound, unnatural coldness seemed to radiate, pushing back against the desert's heat, making Elias's breath mist in the night air. The howling intensified, now sounding like 1,000 tormented voices trapped within a single colossal throat. It was no longer a lament, but a declaration of hunger. The thump-thump grew louder, closer, the ground vibrating with each step of the approaching horror. Buster, with a final terrified yelp, bolted, disappearing into the darkness. Elias stood alone, his rifle raised, facing the chilling manifestation of Widow's Peak's dark legends. Whatever it wasn't just a beast of the wild. It was a creature of the desert's deepest, most ancient fears, and it was coming for him. Elias Vance, a veteran of countless skirmishes, felt a chill that transcended the unnatural cold emanating from the approaching monster. This wasn't a wild animal. This was a force of nature twisted into something unholy. The immense, grotesque form continued its relentless advance, the ground vibrating with each heavy thump-thump, and the deep, mournful howl of countless tormented voices growing louder, closer. He aimed his Winchester and fired. The shot cracked through the night, a sharp retort against the creature's unholy symphony. The bullet struck its massive chest, but there was no roar of pain, no physical recoil. The round simply seemed to embed itself, leaving a faint, dark mark on the creature's mottled, rough hide. It continued its slow, inexorable march, the howl unbroken. Elias fired again, and again, emptying his rifle. Each bullet met the same fate, absorbed by the creature's unnatural form. He knew then that lead wouldn't stop it. This was no beast of flesh and blood. The monster was close enough now for Elias to discern more details. Its hide was a patchwork of gray, cracked earth and shimmering quartz, as if it were a living part of Widow's Peak itself. Its limbs were thick and gnarled, ending in immense, club-like feet that pulverized the ground with each step. Where its head should have been, a swirling vortex of fine, dry dust spun continuously, and within that vortex, 2 points of faint, sickly violet light glowed like malevolent ancient eyes. The howling emanated from this swirling dust maw, a sound of eternal, unquenchable hunger. As it drew nearer, a new sensation overwhelmed Elias. An oppressive, cloying smell of profound despair. It wasn't the scent of death or decay, but something far more insidious. The very essence of lost hope, of lives drained and emptied. The air around the creature became impossibly dry, sucking the moisture from his eyes and mouth, making him gasp for breath. He scrambled back, desperately drawing his Colt revolver. He had 6 shots. His eyes darted around, searching for anything, any weakness, any escape. But the desert was flat here, offering no cover, no refuge from the overwhelming presence. The creature's howls intensified, the sound now echoing his own desperate thoughts, filling his mind with a cacophony of sorrow and dread. It was reaching him, its vast, dust maw swaying, those violet eyes fixing on him with an ancient, insatiable hunger. He could feel the chilling cold radiating from it, seeping into his bones, numbing his very spirit. As the monster took another thunderous step, the ground beneath Elias's feet cracked, and the sparse desert flora around him instantly withered, turning to dry, brittle dust. The sand itself seemed to suck inward, drawn towards the creature's immense form. This was the living thirst of Widow's Peak, not just a consuming force, but one that fed on the very essence of life, leaving only desiccated emptiness. It was coming for him, to turn him into another one of its silenced echoes. Elias emptied his revolver, each shot striking the behemoth's glowing violet eyes. The bullets, just like the rifle rounds, had no visible effect. The dust maw continued its ceaseless howling, the sound now a symphony of impending doom. The pervasive coldness and the cloying scent of despair intensified, pressing down on Elias, making his limbs heavy, his thoughts sluggish. He could feel the thirst of the creature pulling at his very being, draining the life from him. He stumbled backwards, his boots kicking up dust, desperately trying to evade the monster's looming presence. The ground beneath his feet was already beginning to desiccate, losing all moisture, becoming that stark, white dust that radiated an eerie emptiness. He knew he wouldn't last much longer out in the open. His gaze fell upon something glinting in the pale moonlight, almost hidden amidst a cluster of thorny bushes. It was a small outcropping of rock, not ordinary rock, but veins of a strange crystalline substance that seemed to absorb the moonlight, giving off a faint internal shimmer. He recognized it from old prospector tales, ghost rock. It was said to be highly unstable, known to glow with an unnatural light and occasionally cause strange atmospheric phenomena. Silas, an old prospector friend, had once mentioned its odd properties. A desperate, wild idea sparked in Elias's mind. The monster fed on life, on essence. But it seemed to be a creature of the earth, of dust and rock. Perhaps the ghost rock had some property that could disrupt its monstrous form, or at least draw it away. He sprinted towards the ghost rock outcropping, his lungs burning, the pervasive cold making his muscles ache. The howling monster, sensing his desperation, quickened its lumbering pace, the thump-thump echoing his frantic heartbeat. He reached the ghost rock, its surface cool and slick to the touch, despite the desert heat. He grabbed a loose shard, feeling a strange, almost electrical hum from within it. As he did, the howling monster faltered for a second, its swirling dust maw momentarily losing its coherence. The violet eyes flickered, and the scent of despair seemed to lessen ever so slightly. It was drawn to it, or perhaps repelled by it. Either way, it reacted. With a newfound surge of adrenaline, Elias began to pry larger pieces of ghost rock from the outcropping. Each time he broke off a piece, the monster's attention seemed to sharpen, its howls growing more focused on the sound, less on him. It lumbered closer, its massive head tilting, the violet eyes fixed on the glowing rock. This was it. He had to lead it somewhere he could perhaps trap it, or at least give himself a fighting chance. His eyes scanned the horizon, seeking a location. And then he saw it. The mouth of an abandoned mine shaft, a dark, gaping maw in the side of a small hill, a few hundred yards away. It was old, collapsed in places, but it was a confined space. He began to run towards the mine shaft, dropping pieces of ghost rock as he went, creating a glittering trail. The monster, its powerful hunger seemingly redirected, followed him, its howls now mixed with strange guttural sounds of anticipation as it lumbered over the glowing rocks, drawn by their strange energy. It seemed to want to consume them. Elias reached the mine entrance, its darkness a welcome relief from the pervasive cold and hunger. He plunged inside, leaving a final large piece of ghost rock at the entrance, a shimmering beacon to lure the creature into the depths, hoping he wasn't leading himself into a deeper tomb. Elias plunged into the absolute darkness of the abandoned mine shaft, the cool, stale air a brief respite from the desert's heat and the monster's pervasive cold. He fumbled for his lantern, his hands shaking as he lit the wick. Its feeble glow cut through the oppressive blackness, revealing rough-hewn rock walls and decaying wooden supports. The howling of the creature outside grew deafening, echoing off the canyon walls as it lumbered towards the mine entrance. He heard the ominous thump-thump-thump grow louder, closer, followed by the chilling sound of rock grinding against rock. The creature was squeezing its immense form into the narrow mine entrance. The ground beneath Elias's feet began to tremble violently, and fine dust rained down from the ceiling. The mouth of the tunnel soon became a churning vortex of dust and dark shadows as the monster forced its way in. Its glowing violet eyes, now immense in the constricted space, fixed on Elias with an insatiable hunger. The scent of despair intensified, now so strong it almost choked him. The air grew impossibly dry, robbing him of breath. Elias knew he was trapped. The mine was old, unstable, and led only deeper into the mountain. But he had a plan, a desperate gamble based on the creature's reaction to the ghost rock. He clutched the remaining piece of ghost rock he had carried, its cold hum a faint pulse in his hand. He moved deeper into the shaft, the monster's heavy footfalls shaking the very mountain. He could hear the mournful howling now confined, amplified by the tunnel, a terrifying symphony of torment and hunger. He passed several side tunnels, collapsed and choked with debris, offering no escape. Then, he found it. A large, exposed vein of ghost rock, running along the mine wall, stretching deep into the earth. It pulsed with a brighter, more active glow than the surface samples, radiating a cold, almost electrical energy. This was the source, the core of this strange mineral. He knew what he had to do. He jammed the pickaxe he carried into the nearest wooden support beam, creating a fulcrum. Then, he began to furiously dig at the large ghost rock vein, his every muscle screaming in protest. The pickaxe struck the crystalline rock with sharp metallic clangs, each blow sending sparks flying and causing the ghost rock to hum louder, its internal light intensifying. The monster, drawn by the sound and the growing luminescence of the ghost rock, roared. Its howls were no longer just mournful. They were filled with a desperate rage, a territorial fury. It seemed to recognize the danger, to feel its essence threatened. It accelerated its impossible crawl through the narrow tunnel, its massive, dust-formed body scraping against the rock walls, sending showers of dust and debris raining down. Elias dug faster, sweat stinging his eyes, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He felt the cold touch of the monster's presence, the searing dryness it exuded. Its immense, dust-swirling maw was only yards behind him now, the violet eyes blazing with unholy hunger. He heard the grating sound of its monstrous claws tearing at the rock walls, trying to reach him. The mine groaned, its ancient timbers creaking under the immense pressure. He was running out of time. He had to hit the main vein, trigger whatever power this ghost rock held. With a final, desperate swing, Elias brought the pickaxe down with all his remaining strength. It struck the heart of the vein, and a blinding flash of white light erupted from the ghost rock, followed by a guttural, earth-shaking rumble that tore through the mountain. The cavern erupted in a blinding flash of white light, followed by a guttural, earth-shaking rumble that tore through the mountain. Elias was thrown backward by the force, landing hard on the uneven ground. The pickaxe flew from his grasp. The ghost rock vein, now pulsing with an intense, raw energy, began to flicker violently, its glow oscillating from brilliant white to oppressive darkness. The creature, caught in the raw surge of the ghost rock's power, let out an ear-splitting screech, a sound of pure agony that was both dry and metallic, a sound of absolute terror. Its massive, dust-formed body convulsed violently, its glowing violet eyes flaring, then dimming to near extinction. The relentless howling became a fragmented, tortured shriek, then faded into a faint, desperate whimper. The ground around the monster began to fracture, not just from its weight, but as if the mountain itself was reacting to the sudden, chaotic energy. Cracks spread rapidly across the cavern walls, dust and small rocks raining down. Elias, stunned but alive, scrambled to his feet. He could see the ghost rock vein was reacting to the creature, or perhaps the creature was reacting to the ghost rock. The mineral, a rare and volatile element of the earth, seemed to be disrupting the monster's very essence. The creature, its immense form now slowly crumbling into dust, let out a final agonizing wail, a symphony of dying despair. The scent of despair intensified briefly, then vanished entirely, replaced by a sharp, clean smell of ionized air. The pervasive coldness lifted, replaced by the normal, slightly damp air of the mine. As the creature's dust form began to fully disintegrate, an unforeseen consequence of Elias's desperate act began to manifest. The entire mine shaft, destabilized by the immense power unleashed, began to groan ominously. Dust and rocks rained down more heavily, and the remaining wooden supports began to splinter and collapse. The light from his lantern flickered wildly. Elias knew he had to get out. He had defeated the monster, but now the mountain itself was collapsing around him. He ran, scrambling over fallen debris, the sounds of the collapsing mine roaring in his ears. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to breathe. He pushed himself, fueled by a primal instinct for survival, ignoring the sharp pains in his side and the scrapes on his arms. He could hear the cavern behind him collapsing with a thunderous roar, sending a powerful wind current rushing through the tunnel, pushing him forward. He saw the faint light of the mine entrance ahead, a beacon of hope through the chaos. Just as he reached the mouth of the tunnel, a massive section of the mine ceiling directly behind him collapsed with a final earth-shattering thud, sealing the mine shaft forever. A huge cloud of dust and debris billowed out into the desert. Elias stumbled out into the blazing desert sun, gasping for air, covered head to toe in dust and grime. He collapsed onto the ground, coughing and wheezing, his lungs burning. He looked back at Widow's Peak. The mine entrance was gone, sealed by a massive rockfall. The mountain stood silent, looming over the desert, its secret now buried deep within its heart. The howling was gone. The cold was gone. The scent of despair had vanished. Elias had faced the unholy entity of Widow's Peak and had, against all odds, defeated it. The mountain had claimed his mule, his hope for gold, and almost his life, but he had silenced its terrible hunger. He pushed himself up, his body aching, and began the long, solitary walk back to civilization, leaving the dust-covered silent mountain behind him, its secrets now safely buried. Elias Vance's return to civilization was a quiet affair. He never spoke of what truly happened at Widow's Peak. The tale he spun of a freak rockslide and a lost mule was enough to satisfy casual curiosity. But in the depths of his being, he knew the truth. He had faced a living ancient hunger, a creature born of the very dust and rock of the desert, and he had, against all odds, forced it back into the earth. The desert around Widow's Peak slowly began to heal. The extreme desiccation faded, and the sparse flora, once brittle and lifeless, began to show faint signs of recovery. The terrible, mournful howling that had haunted the air was gone, replaced by the natural sounds of the wind, the distant cries of coyotes, and the rustle of lizards. No more livestock vanished without a trace. No more prospectors were found desiccated on its slopes. Elias, though he had survived, was forever changed. The memory of the monster's dust maw, its glowing violet eyes, and the suffocating scent of despair lingered in his nightmares. He never prospected again, settling into a quiet, solitary life in a small cabin far from the mountains. He still felt the cold, almost electrical hum of ghost rock whenever he touched certain stones, a subtle reminder of the strange raw power he had unleashed. Sometimes, on clear desert nights, he would look towards the distant, jagged silhouette of Widow's Peak. It stood silent now, a formidable presence, but no longer radiating malevolence. Its secrets were buried deep within its heart, sealed away with the shattered remnants of the creature it had birthed. The knowledge of what lay within, and the profound silence that now cloaked the mountain, was his alone to bear. The legends of Widow's Peak continued, passed down in hushed tones around campfires, tales of a mountain that claimed lives and whispered sorrows. But now, those who ventured too close reported only the natural dangers of the wild, and the silence of the vast, empty desert. The howling sands of Widow's Peak had found their peace, a peace bought by one man's courage against an ancient, unholy hunger. Elias Vance knew that some battles were fought not for gold, but for the very essence of life against the encroaching void. And in the vast, unforgiving West, sometimes, the greatest triumph was simply to endure, and to silence the echoes of the dead.